I hadn't planned on going over these scripts in my videos. However, this one, called Getting a Timestamp from Text, is very special. It talks about gmmktime and mktime. It's very important to understand the difference between those two functions. As far as I'm concerned, the only one I should use is mktime, unless there is a very specific reason why I should use gmmktime. And the only time I can think of gmmktime as being useful is because it might run faster than mktime. However, if you're more concerned about accuracy, you want to use mktime. gmmktime, as both of these do, converts a regular time, like 2:30 on Wednesday, September 28th or something like that, into a timestamp. The difference between these two is that mktime knows that that time that you specified in its parameter list is a local time, or is the time that's configured before you run the mktime function. Whereas gmmktime assumes that the string that you pass it is the time in Greenwich, England. Or more specifically, you could say gmmktime just ignores the time zone that's configured either for your server or in your script, and just transforms that time parameter into a timestamp. So that's probably why it runs faster, because it doesn't have to worry about that stuff. What makes talking about this even more confusing is the fact that most of the time when you want to read a time value, and the time value is stored as a timestamp, you're going to run the date function on it. And guess what? Date function doesn't care whether you used gmmktime or mktime. It will take the server configured locale into consideration. So that works out fine when you use mktime, because both of these functions now consider your locale. But if you use gmmktime, which ignores the locale, and date function, which does not ignore the locale, then you run into some very confusing output. There is someone on PHP Net who wrote some very good stuff here. I want to read some of it. He says, in the POSIX standard, Unix time does not have a specified time zone. It is universal. For most intents and purposes, you can think of them as always being GMT UTC. And he continues here by saying, do not ever try to adjust a timestamp by a time zone offset. Time zones are basically used only when rendering a timestamp from Unix time into a civil time, date time string. And that's how you should handle time in your PHP scripts. Just keep going over those two sentences a few times and read them like you would do a prayer before you do your programming, and just follow what the essence of those two statements are. And then you should be okay. You won't run into bugs that are hard to detect in your scripts, and, confusion that will drive you and everyone who sees your script or talks about it and drive them into madness, okay?